Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Broken Gears Airsoft number 3. We have no viewers so far, and that's just fine. So, tonight we are talking about what a horrible idea it is to open an airsoft store. So, tonight I'm talking to Mike, who I'm sure you guys remember if you've watched any of our top tier material thus far, who's run two shops so far, and just so we can keep this we can continue not blatantly falsely advertising that we're a teching podcast. You obviously have a modicum of tech experience, both inside it or both during your time at each shop and beyond. So, yeah, just for a little bit of a quick disclaimer, obviously neither of us are legal, business, insurance, or accounting or any other flavor of legitimate business professionals. So as far as things go on that end, obviously consult a real credentialed expert. But we're just going to
that's a good
pretend that
place
you're
to
past
start,
that point.
actually.
Yeah. And you've got your property picked out, got all that fun shit
It's
locked down, and you're
definitely
really looking at things specifically from the airsofting perspective, right?
right. Well, assuming that you're going into this, as understanding that airsoft may or may not actually be a giant moneymaker. A lot of people assume that if you open a store, you're obviously loaded. Oh, you must have all the cool stuff, and no, most of us don't. A lot of people in stores don't even play airsoft; they're just doing it as a retail business. Um, So your biggest things are always location. Like they always tell you, like the best way to do any kind of business is to make sure that location, location, location. And if you don't have a good location, you won't get the foot traffic, and you won't get you have to have a decent parking lot if you expect people to drive up with their cars. So there's a little bit that goes into the backside of that. But if you found a good location and you like where it is and the rent's okay, and you move in and you're like, hey, I want to actually set this store up and do it right. And a lot of guys, there's many different schools of thought on it. At least locally, there's been a couple of different thoughts between all the stores that have been around here in the Buffalo and Rochester area, both present and past. um, I've always believed that you needed to have somebody as a tech. Airsoft guns go down pretty easy.
Enough that you need a tech.
Yeah, and and even if the gun's brand new out of the box, there's no guarantee that it's going to work properly. There might be a problem with the battery or the charger, or anything that goes into that, and that becomes kind of an issue too. So you need to have somebody who at least understands the basic precepts. I've been in stores between here, Atlanta, all over the world that not over the world, but all the U.S. that the level of professionalism is sometimes not the same as you go through life. Uh, a lot of it is, some of these guys are, they don't care about teching it, so they're just going to sell the gun, and if it comes back broken, then the customer's screwed, and I don't like that. And then some people, they get really heavy into the gear as opposed to the guns, which again, I suppose is okay if that's what you want to do, but
You're not
some
too close to a
stores,
surplus store.
yeah, if you can partner up with a surplus store, that's great. I know some people have done that. I've done that actually in my first store. We worked with a local surplus store to make sure we could have inventory in there. And these guys would come in about once a week or so, and we'd swap inventory around and collect their share of what we sold that week, and away they went. It was pretty cool.
Right on.
Second time through though, the second store we just carried our own stuff instead of partnering up, and that worked okay. But problem is most guys in the military are not my size. They tend to be about half my size. So finding that kind of gear, you have to have a source for that, and you can get stuff through like the bigger brand name companies. You can set up accounts and get them through there, but actual like surplus gear, that becomes a whole different story when you get into big guy sizes, um, not fun sizes. Um,
But they make them all, being airsoft.
oh yeah,
Knowing
oh
airsoft.
yeah. I
Knowing
mean,
airsofters.
yeah, we set up. You have to go, commercial accounts with people. So a lot of people use like Evike or I think Red Wolf did one for a while. Like any of the bigger companies that are out there now. Airsoft GI did for a bit, but I don't know if I don't
Trade accounts, you said.
Yeah, trade accounts. Nowadays, you go directly to the sources. Like you go to G&G, you go to Classic Army, or whichever company you want to, sell their merchandise. You can go directly to them, which I think is pretty cool too. We couldn't do that initially because the import rules are really weird when we had our store open. So sometimes you get really hit or miss as far as like, I really want to get that brand new. And this is going to date myself. I want to get that brand new classic Army, M4 that's coming out, the Sportline series. Yeah, I'm definitely dating myself. And, like you couldn't get them from anybody except for directly from Spartan Imports at the time. And the guys that worked at Spartan were amazing, like so good to work with. Um, but again, I was a really small store. I wasn't like, like some of these stores, they have like, 80 guns in the wall. Like we had like 20 maybe. Like we were pretty small. And we carry a lot of gear and stuff. But again, it depends on what you want to get. You got to go to the dealerships to get them.
Sure.
Same with like higher end clothing. If you want to carry like a London Bridge or any of the higher end companies, again, I'm a little dated, so um, whatever the current trend is, whatever the guys really want to have, they're like, oh my god, I got to have the Gucci gear. Sometimes you have to set up accounts with them too. They want trade, people that can verify the fact that you pay your bills on time. Lines of credit, that kind of stuff. And then it comes back down to is once you've figured out like what kind of direction you want to take the store in, how do you finance this train wreck? And so like we were a small store with low overhead, so for us it wasn't really complicated initially. But then you find that the markup on airsoft is not quite what you hoped it would be, and the markup on surplus is also not what you hope it would be. So you end up making profit margins that are closer to charity work than Bill Gates. So then you have to try and figure out how to pay rent, and then your utilities, and then suddenly the cable bills due, and then you're like, why am I doing this? This is stupid. So that's kind of how that works sometimes for some people. I had a lot of fun with both stores, honestly, on and off. We had a really good time. Second store, we had more problems with too many Chiefs, not enough Indians. But
I hear us getting kicked off YouTube already.
Whatever. Oh, that's kind of racially insensitive. I'm sorry, I didn't even think about that. No, I suppose it's too many bosses and not enough workers. How's that? Sorry, guys.
I'll edit it out. Don't worry.
Thank God. So a lot of the issues you run into is if you have a lot of guys who want to get involved in it, work with you, it can work out really well and be really a good time.
Yeah.
The problem is you just got to make sure that everybody understands what the responsibilities are. They tell you when you incorporate a business, you got to go through and write bylaws. And we didn't really do that, and we really should. So there was a lot of hindsight being 2020 where, I'm now able to look back 10 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever the hell it was, 9 years ago, that, it is what it is. And, like there's no hard feelings between the partners as far as I know. We don't really talk anymore, but I mean, some of us do, but we all went different directions with our lives as far as what we wanted to do and what direction we went in. But as far as like basic advice for stores, get a good location, always keep some stock. Like I ran out of BBs once. That was kind of embarrassing. We were down to like the .12s, just like they were like bright lime green. Yeah. Those don't sell well.
The gold standard, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the gold ones are the gold standard, but
the spring gold standards were the 1-2s. We literally, the guy that I was getting BBs from, we were getting from a guy who actually made like a kind of a higher end BB that I really liked. Wasn't able to ship to us for like, I don't remember, it was like 4 weeks or something. They were changing over the process of the plant or something. And I didn't realize how low I'd gotten on stock. And I thought, I got another box in the back, right? A couple boxes back there with, 80 bags in a box. Yeah, no, they're all empty. Oh, that's great. So then I'm scrambling to find BBs because everybody, of course, needed BBs to play. And, trying to get it all squared away so everybody has kind of, what they need. It can be a challenge. Right. Not having a lot of retail experience when I opened the store, I learned a lot about everything when you open a store. So, you start out with basically, when you take a loan out, how does that process work? Oh, that's how that works. Great. Okay.
It's not just free money, and I've heard.
No, they want you to pay it back, weirdly enough.
Right.
And there's actually like due dates and stuff. And they're like, hey, you're kind of late today. And I'm like, okay.
They get mad if you just move it between credit cards and.
Yeah,
I've heard. There's a thing that I've heard.
It's not good. That's a whole different realm of not good. But a lot of it comes down to is just, making sure that you get the financials taken care of first. A lot of people ask like, how much do I need? I can tell you what I did it with, and I can tell you why I'm not doing it anymore because I didn't have enough to do it with.
I say, well, to harken, I mean, that's like more. Isn't that more or less like asking what size wrench you need to work on your car? I mean, it's kind of important whether you want to reference our joke from last time. It's important if you want to do this out of the back of your Sentra
Right.
or 1,000
Yeah.
feet of
Yeah.
retail space. So
I
to
mean,
sit and ask how much you need depends on a couple of things, right?
oh, it depends on a lot of things. But I mean, for a basic brick and mortar store, I think we had when we first opened, we had about $7,000 or $8,000 of inventory. That was it. We bought a lot of fixtures, a lot of clothing racks, a lot of hangers, a lot of display cases. That was like another 7 or 8K.
Right.
The insurance in the first, I think we paid our rent up for 6 months. That was like what was it, 1,200 a month or $1,400 a month. So like another 6 or 7K. So we're at 21 now, and our store was literally 40 by 60 or 40 by 40, no, 40 by 55 maybe. It was small. Had a small little bathroom in the back and a little tech area, and that was it. It was a big open room with one door, and it worked great for what we were doing. Honestly, it was fantastic. Our
Sure.
location was absolutely wonderful. And the only downside was the other nearest store that had been established and been around for a while was 5 miles down the road.
Sure.
So there was some friction there. And I mean, I get it. It is what it is. But the problem was our rent eventually outdid our sales.
Mhm.
When we originally looked at it, we would figured that we would have a lot more sales than we were having. And so we kind of lowered the pricing on some stuff where we didn't make as much markup. And then it was kind of like, oh, geez, the rent is still $1,200 and we're only doing $1,180 of sales a month. This could be a problem. So we looked at alternative locations and ultimately decided to close after about a year and a half.
Right.
Not because of lack of interest in sport. There were still plenty of people playing, which is great. But just the dynamic was not working where we were at.
Sure. Sure.
So we moved on. He opened up an indoor field that worked out for him for a while. I went back to just running games because that was what I kind of like doing. Not really a lot of money in that either, strangely enough. Everybody goes like, "Oh my God, you had 100 players. You must make a killing." And I'm like, "Yeah, no. You start doing the math and you
There's this
break
thing.
it
There's this thing that
down.
goes by the name of a prize pool that has to be financed, and
Yeah, so
that
like,
pretty
oh, I
much
love
does it
your
itself.
games. I love your games because you always hand out like 7 AEGs and a bunch of mags and a whole ton of gear. And I'm like, yeah, yeah. So that's literally $200 less than what the op total was. Oh, and then factor in the wristbands that I bought, the raffle tickets, the amount of time and energy that was put into planning it. Oh, and I also provided lunch. So this game cost me a grand total of $500. And so, like I just like doing it. So that was kind of my gig. But
For
people were
sure.
like, oh my God, you guys must be making so much money. Like $14,000 a year, I think was the one number that quoted. And of
I
course, we
remember
were
that story.
dying. And I'm like, how? What are you on, dude? Like, I want the drugs that your mom gave you because you're obviously fucked up. And so, at one point in time, I drove 90 miles with all of my books because I kept actual records of what we were doing.
Oh, I remember this story.
And I gave them to the guy, and I'm like, here you go, dude. Like, you might want to look this over. And after like about half an hour of him going over the books, that he never
Half an
brought it up
hour.
again. He was like, "Oh my God, like you're actually losing money all the time." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's pretty much how that works." I enjoyed having a good time, and honestly, like the camaraderie and whatnot of doing the field games and playing with the guys was great, and that was why I did it. But a lot of it too, like I don't know, dude. Like I've run. I don't even know how many fields I've run. 7, 8 fields over the years. Different locations, different game styles, different game setups. Some years, man, they were great years. And I really those years where it tides me over and makes me happy now. And then there are other years where I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? I will straight up murder all of you people. I will burn this place to the ground and go home and sleep like a fucking baby. And so there was a lot of, hostility sometimes.
Peaks and
You
valleys,
know,
right?
but I had a lot of really good people that helped me out, and that was one of the biggest things about Airsoft was I shouldn't say is about Airsoft. is the people that you meet sometimes become closer than family, and it's kind of cool to see. Like,
It's a perfect segue as our second viewer tunes in tonight. Pardon the interruption.
oh, we have 2 viewers. That's terrifying. Sorry, folks.
It's
But a
probably our
lot.
one associate in class right now.
That's right. That's right. Well, at least he showed up.
Word.
A lot of it comes down to is, when you get involved in the airsoft community, like, you form kind of, a brotherhood with other people, and it's kind of cool. Like, I enjoy it a lot. Like, as far as like the camaraderie and the horsing around and the bullshit. I think that a lot of people miss out on, a lot of things because they get too wrapped up in the who's winning, who's losing aspect of airsoft. But I mean, the fuck do I know? I just played for a while and did some stuff.
Word. Well, hell of an origin story, and we've honestly touched on what could be a script of questions had I not been particularly prepared, and I definitely am.
That's
But
right.
yeah, let's dive right into some specifics here. So we've talked about,
Sure.
obviously, location,
Yeah.
squared, cubed, whatever. Scale of operation depends or heavily influences things like
Yeah.
startup costs. So which is really probably a subject best discussed with your board of experts discussed or mentioned at the beginning here. So
Or
let's
whoever is bankrolling you.
right.
They better
Gotta
know.
be.
They better
They
know.
better, if they're not the same person, they better be there. Yeah.
That's right.
So yeah, we walk in, we're set up first. It's a grand opening. What does it look like inside? Do you have any advice, particularly on how to set up your space? Let's talk about the retail storefront specifically.
Okay, so again, traveling around and seeing like all of these different things. Hey, Joe. Um, going to different stores, going to different retailers, going to surplus stores. Trying to feel out kind of the market area and how it actually works. If and again, it's going to depend on what you decide to put in your stores. Yeah. So if you're going to run surplus stuff and you want to run like, a little bit of boots or whatever and some camouflage or netting or whatever, that should be in its own area. Obviously, gear I always thought looked better in its own area. Everybody wants the big, huge gun display on the wall. You get the slat board and all the hooks and you put all your guns up so everybody can be like, ooh, that's a really cool gun. Which I think is pretty cool if that's kind of what you want to do. But the biggest thing I can suggest to anybody opening a store is don't overlook parts. Like, don't overlook parts. Batteries, BBs, and parts. I mean, that's honestly where all of your markup can be.
They're
And that's where your
consumables.
most profit is. Because, I mean, the guns you make, yeah, 5, 10, 15 bucks maybe on a gun. If you sold like a high-end gun. Like, we kept our prices about if we could because they had the map thing. You couldn't go below map. But, like,
Sure.
literally on a lot of this is
Yeah, I just bought these glasses, Oakley's, same shit.
Yeah. They
10%
had
or something.
yeah, it was very low margin. So we were constantly like, oh, Jesus, like we got to sell this to be competitive and we're getting nothing for them. And then after I shopped around for BBs, I realized BBs are insane to mark up, depending on where you get it from. I'm not going to mention names, but there is a BB company that still exists right now that sells a ton of BBs that literally their cost is so nominal, it's ridiculous. So stores that are selling these BBs for like, 25 bucks, 30 bucks a bottle are picking them up for like 15 or 16. Now the prices may have changed. I haven't had a store again in a few years, but
I'm sure they've changed a lot in the past 9-10 months.
I still have access to my accounts. I just don't do any ordering. So no. Now I'm sure it will because the whole thing with getting the imports in from China, I know it's going to make things really weird locally for the next couple of years. Because you're not getting the guns anymore, the parts, the batteries you can probably get hit or miss, but eventually it's going to come down to BBs, and if there's not an American maker of BBs, which there wasn't one in Canada and 1 or 2 in the U.S., but I think they were down in Texas, and that was a long time ago. I don't know if they're still around. I can't remember the name of the outfit down there. I thought it was Airsoft. I don't remember. It's been a long time. I could dig through my emails and find it, but I'm too lazy, and honestly, who cares? So in any case, if you can find the BBs and get your BBs in cheap and keep them coming in like in the next year or so, like I know they had this whole big thing about the tag-ins. The tag-ins are made in Russia, they were saying, and there was like an import ban.
Oh, really?
Or something. Oh yeah, dude, like it was all over the news, and I was like, Jesus, airsoft news. And I thought, well, that sounds kind of crazy, but then I started thinking about it. I mean, tag-ins aren't made domestically Nobody makes tag-ins. There's companies that make gun parts locally. There's companies that make guns locally, like within the U.S., but not a lot. Most of the guns are all made like over in China or Taiwan or not in the U.S. I know there's still a few Japanese manufacturers floating around too, but it makes it really hard for people to get all the stuff in. And again, I'm going way off track. I apologize. Make sure that you're listening to your customer base, and make sure that you understand when they say, if you had some more red dot scopes, ... and then you don't buy red dot scopes, and then they show up at the next game with a new red dot scope they ordered from somebody else down the street, that's because you're a moron. And you should have listened to your customer base. We did that a couple times where I didn't realize that people were like basically asking me to order things. I thought they were like, hey, if you happen to get one. So we changed our policies around to, if you want something, let me know and I'll order it. Because I didn't have the place to put all the stuff, and I didn't want to have the overhead in the store. So we swapped to doing that, and that made more sense for a bit. So layout wise, honestly, make it how you want to. Make sure there's a way to catch somebody if they're running out the door. I've had that experience a few times. They thought they were faster than a fat dude, which, I mean, honestly, the one kid was. But
you mean stealing shit? I thought you meant displays
targeting
people on the way out who didn't buy anything. Okay. Yeah.
No. The kid grabbed something off a shelf, turned and ran, tripped over the parking curb, and smashed into the hood of my car. Knocked himself silly. Like, I'm pretty sure it broke teeth. And he was like some 14-year-old kid. He grabbed like a canteen, and I'm like, dude, like, was this a bad bet or something? Like, you can keep the canteen. I don't care. And he was kind of like, well, I just, I don't know what I was thinking. And I'm like, so how's your face doing? And he's got blood pouring out his nose and blood out his mouth. And I'm just like, what the fuck? And then his mom came in like the next day to yell at me, I thought, and she apologized and was like, well, I should pay you for the canteen. I'm like, lady, like, I don't think you get it, man. Like, I don't care. Like, I thought it was hysterical. How's your kid doing? And she's like, well, he chipped one of his teeth. I think he broke his nose or something. And I'm like, brilliant. Like, over $5. Like, why? But in any case, keep all your stuff that's valuable behind the counters so the customers can't reach it.
Right.
When you first go in the morning, make sure there's no batteries in anything. Make sure there's no gas in anything. I couldn't tell you how many times showing customers how things worked. We had a series of pistols / submachine guns, rifles, whatever, that we would keep unloaded, but sometimes we put gas in. And then, of course, it's an airsoft store, so there's BBs everywhere. And somebody inevitably picks up a BB and chucks it in a mag because that's what people do. And then
they're reusable.
We go to demo a gun and then shoot out a light. Not that it ever happened in my store more than 4 times. And so there was some humor to that, mostly bang, pop, shit. And then panic mode kicked in. I'm like, oh, did glass get in your eye? Yeah, so double check all your stuff and make sure that nothing is loaded. I promise you it's worth your time to check every morning and every night just to make sure that there's never an issue.
Yeah.
Tech guys.
Your insurance guy will like that a lot. God forbid there's a claim.
Yeah. You don't want to do that.
Right.
Tech work's a tough one. We had a per hour rate we used that I'd pay the tech guy. He'd come in and fix X amount of stuff, and then I'd pay him by the hour. And he was pretty quick. He could rebuild most stuff pretty fast. But a lot of it comes down to is have a separate tech area. And if the tech needs parts, he needs to come to the shelf, tell me what bill it's on, and then put it in the back. Because sometimes they'd grab the part to fix the gun so they can go home, and then they forget to put it on the tab, and then I let the gun go back out. I gave him a free piston. It was $120 or whatever. We had an upgraded sniper rifle that went out like that with a new barrel and hop up. I had no idea. Oh yeah, but that hop up and that special order thing you brought in. I'm like, that went out in that gun. Like, guys, like, I just gave the kid a $150 upgraded sniper rifle. I'm sure he was very happy because he never came back to tell me.
It's rumored to be out there to this day.
It probably is. Like, probably in somebody's garage, though. Honestly,
all right.
Airsoft is so weird locally here in Buffalo. Like, we had this huge, big explosion, and then we had like back and forth rivalry, sort of. stupidity. And then, once that kind of tapered off, then I closed, and the other person closed, and then there's no rivalry. Now there's no stores. Now there's only one field, and everybody's freaking out. I'm like, you know what? Whatever, man. It doesn't make any sense to me, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, to have its private tech area, again, I'm going to kind of go off on tangents. I apologize.
Oh, please do.
I'm really good at that. I got an A in that in college.
I was just going to ask you about tech stuff, so please dive in.
So, make sure your tech guy actually knows what he's doing. I definitely had a couple techs that said they know how to fix guns, and then they did not. Well, I don't know what's wrong with it. Here's the pile of parts. I got to go home.
Was this like fixing a laptop, right?
Yeah. So, word of advice, if your tech says that he can fix it, have him do a little trial run. Give him something to fuck with. You throw him $10 just to make sure you can actually tear apart a mech box without losing like all of the springs, and then come up to the front and go, I don't have any springs in the back. And
well, you don't need those, yeah.
Yeah. The anti-reversal lash in an AG actually does need a spring. I don't know if anybody needs to hear that besides one of my former techs. It needs to have a spring. Otherwise, it flops around the mech box and occasionally will stop and jar and blow gears out of the side of it. It's really cool.
Hell yes.
Especially when you've already given it back to the customer and now you have to buy a new mech box and new gears. Thank you. Great times.
Gears break. What can we say?
Yeah, well, if you are doing repair work, there is no warranty, folks. There's none. There should never be one. If you fix something, it works when you pick it up and you shoot the first batch of BBs. After that is put back on the ground in a case anywhere, it may or may not ever work again. And that's just a fact of airsoft. A lot of the more modern guns, I think, are better built than what we had, going back, 5-10 years. Like the new Amoebas and stuff are pretty solid.
Amazing.
Yeah, like honestly, like they've kind of refined it and made things a little bit smoother, a little bit nicer, a little bit more. I don't know. I won't say user friendly because some of the stuff I've seen some of these cats carrying on the fields, man, I'm like, what the fuck is that? But I'm just old. A lot of the technology though they put into the guns now is definitely like upgraded stuff. It was an ICS had the split mech box first, and that was like you could take the mech box out with a spring, the spring piston tappet and a nozzle all on one top, and you could pull that out and drop in another spring assembly, so you can change your FPS really quick. Similar to like a poor man's Systema. So instead of pulling the Systema cylinder out, same basic concept, but really more primitive. And I'm pretty sure it was the ICS that did those. And honestly, like those were so cool to see those when they first came out. And then everybody had no idea how to work them. And then we found like one guy who showed us how to like, this is how you take it apart. You guys are morons. It's basically just a mech box cut in two. And then all of a sudden we were all like, oh, geez, we can do that. That's dumb. So then we learned how to actually work on the ICS stuff. And it's the innovation stuff that I think that really, I don't know. It makes a lot of change as far as like what you got to, going back to what you need to have in the store. Wow, I'm really going roundabout tonight. I apologize. It's been a wild ride. I took 2 cabs and a taxi to get here. No, 2 cabs and a train to get here.
Right.
So in any case, when you're going through man, I'm going to talk myself right into a corner. So when you go through and you're having your store set up with the tech, the tech stuff is the most important thing as far as customers. And you got to make sure, again, no warranties. You can't give anybody the warranty because it doesn't make any sense because the guns do break for random reasons. Yeah, generally warranties / like refunds should not be a thing in a store. If you bring it back to me in its plastic wrap, yeah, okay. If you bring it back to me in 40 pieces, not so much. So if you are using your airsoft gun and you run between 2 trees and it breaks in half,
hell yes.
That's not a warranty issue. That's a you issue. If you jumped off of a cool cliff and slid down an embankment and your pistol smashed against 30 rocks and then I was literally in a 400-piece pile in a baggie, also not a warranty issue. That's a you issue. And I think
it worked in Starship Troopers, but
yeah, no, but that was they had giant aliens, and there was that thing with the weird like it was just weird.
Right.
Kind of sexual in a really weird sort of way. I didn't like that whole probing of the bug thing. That was very rapey.
Here they're making an RTS in March. I'm pretty hype. The demo's out.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cool. All right, I might get into that. Uh, not the
In the
rape.
movie universe too.
Yeah,
Pretty cool. I mean, I would argue that things like the minis game in the early 2000s probably had a little more stuff as far as unit diversity, etc. But they based it in the film universe. I'm like, all right.
Honestly, they did that Aliens Fire Team. Have you seen that yet?
Yeah, a couple of
I'm
friends are playing, including our
completely off
regular
tangent.
Evan.
Yeah. So yeah,
I want to get it soon. I've heard nothing but good things.
I really want to check it out because it looks cool. And that was honestly out of all the Alien movies, like where the Marines are like, "Let's rock," and Vasquez opens up and all this stuff.
Yes.
I was like, "Oh my god!" Yeah, she was probably one of my first crushes after Cyndi Lauper. I look eclectic women. I don't know what to tell you. Any case, so back to the store.
We'll have to play that on an off night. I want to do gaming streams. That's the road to our first million. I was just telling Tom.
All right, I'm in.
I know it for sure.
I mean, I play horrible games and nobody wants to hear my bullshit, but I'll tell you all about them.
Well, that's the fundament of the streaming platform. I cannot.
That's right. You got to be passionate about your bullshit.
Right.
So, in any case, back to the store. I mean, the other thing is, you got your tech set up and you've got all your stuff geared out and you've got a good layout so you can make sure people don't steal your shit. And you got a countertop. Buy yourself a point of sale system. Literally, you can program barcodes into them and sticker everything, and it's super easy. You can get a decent POS system from almost anywhere. Cisco sells one or used to sell one for like $150. And then you use a computer and you install the software and then you buy a scanner gun and that's it. And you literally can run your store. Nowadays, you've got like, was it Square and... I
was just going to say, what you just said, Mike, for a real brick and mortar operation is probably still approximately the minimum. But as far as just from the perspective of staying, of a cashless option and then allowing them to pay you, nowadays you can get these little... My Streamlight is my prop here. Little stand-up triangles.
Right.
Venmo distributes with a smartphone code. So they literally hold their phone up, and that pulls your account info. At that point, they type in the amount, hit send. Jesus. One of my neighbors at the farmers market, he just sells produce and shit, and he was able to get one set up for, I think they were free. I want to say they take 1% or a couple cents per sale or something. It's fucking nothing.
Yeah, like yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's tax implications that go into that because I know that after a certain amount of, or you may have to actually link it to your business account or something. Like it depends on how you set it up, but yeah, I mean, that said, make sure you pay your taxes because otherwise they'll just come to your house and shoot you.
Right.
I mean, I didn't say that, but that's what I've heard. It may or may not have happened, in certain places. So in any case, yeah, I mean, like just having any kind of POS system though really gives you the versatility to stay kind of up on your inventory because inventory is a big deal. If you don't have a POS system, I can tell you, walking through an airsoft store that has 600 some odd pieces of fucking tack gear, because you bought a whole bunch of it off some guy in a burlap bag. I didn't ask him
for $100, right?
Yeah, maybe $50. I don't remember. And and you pick up. We did trade-ins, which again is a very mixed bag. I don't think I would.
Gotta know what you're looking at.
Again. Well, you gotta know what you can resell it for, is what it boils down to.
Right.
Like, I don't think I would do trade-ins towards anything new anymore. I'd probably just do it towards like used shit. So you carry new stuff, you can carry used shit. You can do trade-ins for the used stuff. Then you get kind of fresher inventory if you don't want to keep dumping money into stock.
So yeah, that's actually how would that work? If I bring in $20 of used tack gear, you would ideally issue me store credit that I can't spend on things like new guns.
So okay, insider secrets, guys. You're issued a paper form that says it's worth X amount of money. Kind of like how we agree that the American economy dollars actually are what they say they are, not. They got rid of the gold standard years ago. We're being lied to. And
as opposed to the gold standard, as we're about to demonstrate.
That's right. So we would give out certificates, and you had to have a certificate to redeem it. I don't keep a record of it. I don't care. Not my problem. So people would come in and be like, "Hey, I had store credit here." I'm like, "That's cool. Like, where's your credit?" Well, I don't know. I can't help you. Okay, all stores do this. It's kind of shady. Sorry, not my goal, but that's kind of how it worked because I didn't want to have to worry about trying to keep a file. When we first opened the one store, we kept a file, like literally on every single person that came in.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
So it was awful. It was so much legwork. So we had to make sure that when we first were selling them, we were afraid because New York
What is
State
that
was,
like? Most of the paperwork of involved with getting registered and waivers for like waiving like if you have a field, but minus the income generated by a field.
yeah, yeah. It's all the work with none of the payout. So we had to get a photocopy because originally New York State told us we had to have photocopies of every person that bought something from our store that was an airsoft gun. Let that sink in for a second. So I have to legally prove that if I'm selling an airsoft replica to somebody, they have to be above the age of 18. And I have to have the receipt attached to a photocopy of their license. You follow what I'm saying? Like it gets stupid. And then we had a waiver for a while that you had to sign to buy an airsoft gun that said you wouldn't do anything stupid with it or jeopardize your life by death by cop.
Oh wow, this is new. That I
No,
didn't remember.
no, this is old. This is old. So that was a thing for a very short period of time. After which I finally got clarification on it that said, no, you don't have to do all of that. You just need to check their IDs like you would at a bar. So now I
How
have
many
all these
man hours
files
wasted?
uncounted. Like I couldn't even wrap my head around it. It was 6 months of collecting data. And immediately after they said I didn't need to keep it anymore, I shredded it all and then took the shreddings and burned it all because I was so angry at New York State for that. So my concern was I'm literally sitting on a stack of 200 people's driver's licenses. I have your name, I have your address, I have your driver's license. I'm uncomfortable with this information and I don't want it. So we burned it all. We got rid of it all. And, we didn't keep any of it. We kept the receipt stack so we could give it to our tax guy at the end of the year. But, you know, it was pretty rough. Like there were moments, and again, not knowing the laws and trying to protect ourselves to make sure that we didn't get in trouble because waivers were a thing, that showed that there was an intent that you let the people know these can cause you to get shot at by people who have real guns.
Especially if you're out with them on Halloween. Don't do it, folks.
Yeah, like at this point in time, like if you have to be told not to do it, I don't know. Darwin might be right.
Yeah.
So yeah, any case, but as far as that, we had so many hoops to jump through when we first opened the stores up, and it was very difficult to kind of get to that point where we were like, oh, we're good. No, we're really good. Everything's okay. And then things kind of just flowed from there, and either it works or it doesn't, depending on how many people come in. And oh, I came in twice last week. Yeah, I haven't seen you in 3 months, so we're closing the store because you're literally the only person I've seen in 2 weeks or the last 3 months. And selling to one guy is great, but if he's not buying 10K worth of shit a month, you're not going to keep your doors open. There was some harsh realities that we had to face when we opened the store. We wanted to open up stores to be competitive with other people because they were, in our opinion, they were charging more than what they should have. Especially after seeing what wholesale prices were. So the anarchist in me kicked in, and I'm like, yeah, fight the man. And realistically, you can fight the man when you're young. You can fight him when you're old. You're not going to win. Not unless everybody decides to fight the man. And let's be honest, 20% people really did anything ever. The rest of us are just floating through life, having a good time or not, depending on where your road in life is. So we had these great experience, a great idea. We were like, hey, we're going to open this renegade underground kind of, store. And that was our first pitch. And it was okay. And we did okay. I got no hard feelings about the first one or the second one, honestly.
Right on.
And the second one was more of a group of guys who just didn't want to pay retail anymore. And we opened the store and filled it with shit. And if people came in, that's cool. If they didn't, nobody really gave a shit. There were days. I mean, honestly, we all had computers there. We were gaming in the store. People would walk in and they'd be like, "Hey, can I get out?" We're like, "Dude, we're gaming. Shut up." And so it came more like an adult hangout, I guess. It was interesting.
Oh, they should have shot a documentary about that.
Yeah, I'd be terrified. The porn, dude. Just the whole place looked like a Jackson Pollock film under black light. But I mean, realistically, it was definitely tough. It's hard if you have partners in a business and you don't all see eye to eye on things. And again, no ill will towards any of those guys. They're all fascinating dudes in their own right, and they're good people.
Right.
But we weren't meshing well, and that's why we ended up closing our second one, I think. Um, a lot of times it's financials. Like if you have like a bunch of partners and everybody's financially involved in it, that can cause problems.
Right.
Like again, if you have a partner, that's fine. I think that's probably the simplest solution. Working it by yourself is the best solution. If you get the startup capital, I mean, I would never steer anybody away from it, but I'd tell them flat out, start small. Sell them out of a van, whatever, then move up to a trailer.
Chunky or Central.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, like it's crazy, but if you don't have a good location, and right now every good location's been built, I think for the most part, like most places have an airsoft store now, of some sort within probably I'm gonna say 100 miles of any major city. There's at least one place you can go to. I mean, there's places like I remember Long Island when it was booming, had like 9 big stores within I don't even remember like 7 miles or something like that. Like it was nuts.
Wow.
Yeah, Rochester at one point in time, I think had 3 or 4 stores open. Um, and now not so much. Now I think Performance Hobbies and River City, the only two that are still open now. I know that Rock Air, when they reopen, they should have some sort of small store. But again, I don't. That wasn't really their thing. Um, and Performance Hobbies doesn't do a lot of tech work anymore. I don't think. They used to have a couple of really good dudes there who really, I mean, were very passionate about making the guns work, and they were really good dudes. Of course, these guys are now are like, when I knew them, they were like 19, 20, and now they're like late 20s, early 30s. They're married, they have kids. You know what I mean? Like, it's a different scene now than it
It was
was,
like 10 years ago.
Yeah, man, longer than that probably. But I definitely would encourage people to do it if they want to take that entrepreneurial jump. But realistically, be prepared to throw a decent amount of money at it and understand that, no matter how much of a good deal you think it is or how cool something is that you have, your clientele may not. I thought that, certain guns were so cool and I'm like, oh man, everybody's going to love this gun. And I'd order 2 or 3 of them, put them on a wall. And like 7 months later, still on the wall. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Or getting trapped into last year's trends, like when they changed the key mods to M locks, and then everybody's like, "Oh, I want my key mod," and then like literally like a month later, everybody's like, "I want M locks," and then everybody has like this stockpile of key. You get the idea. So you just want to try to stay current with what the people are looking for. Things people are nobody's looking for. Anything from like okay, things no one's looking for. Nobody wants to buy a box of broken guns. Nobody. So when you come into a store and you say to the owner of the store, I would like to sell you all of these broken guns. And I say, oh, why would you want to sell all these broken guns? Oh, because I tore them all apart and I've lost pieces and I don't know which guns go to what. And I have 5 guns in here, I think, but I'm not sure. It might be 4 or it might be 6. So I'm like, oh, how
Somewhere
about
in the
20
neighborhood. Yeah.
bucks? And they're like, oh no, I want $500 for this because each gun is $20. I'm like, oh my god, like no.
Right. I got to dip out about 5 minutes. All you.
Okay.
Oh no, that's. How do you play this?
Oh.
Yeah.
What are we playing?
All right, let rip. Be right back.
Okay, no problem. If you bring in, like whatever you might think is really worth a lot of money to you may not be worth a lot of money to the retailers. And a lot of times when you're the retailer, you have to take into consideration that somebody might come in and be like, hey, I really want to get airsoft to my brother, my uncle, my cousin, whatever is really into airsoft. And, I want to trade whatever. What's up, Caboose? Like knowing the product line that you're selling really makes a big difference, and having the confidence to, explain why you like something as opposed to, whatever else is currently trendy or popular always helps. Just having good stock, I think, really helps. And honestly, your staff, as Caboose pointed out, like, if you have a good staff, your store sells itself. A lot of it comes into, if your staff's not doing what they're supposed to be doing or they're not paying attention or whatever, you'll run into a lot of problems with people coming in and not having a good experience in your store, and then they just don't come back. You get enough of those people, and suddenly you're out of business. So you guys really, that's something to really consider is making sure your staff guys are both friendly, knowledgeable, a decent salesman, and definitely not looking up weird things on the internet that customers see or your coworkers see, because then you never live it down. And some things just, will always be in our minds about certain individuals that worked for us. Um, that said, what else we got? We've gone over staffing. We've gone over point of sale system. We've gone over teching. We've gone over keeping parts in your store, BBs, gas. Um, always try and get one of the new cool things that are out there. Like when Taggins first came out, I was skeptical myself. But after seeing like a bunch of dudes train wreck another bunch of dudes at Taggins, I was like, that's actually kind of cool. I can see how that would sell. Airsoft grenades, generally speaking, if you can get them, they're probably a good idea because it's a nice force multiplier when you're playing. Any of the cool stuff. But again, I wouldn't sink a ton of money into it till you know for sure that your people that are coming in to look at this, and buy stuff from you, uh, really like that. Because I mean, sometimes you get like gadgety stuff. They had this really cool suppressor that worked like baby powders in it or something. I mean, you shot it, this puff of smoke would come out, and we were all like, "That is really really cool." And then we started hearing nightmare stories about how that puff of smoke was jamming up barrels and like it was drifting back down barrel ends and shooting BBs all over the place and all this craziness that came with it. And so then suddenly they were all gone. And I was like, oh, those are kind of cool. And then they had a bunch of grenades that were like, I don't know if they were spring powered, or I think they were spring powered, like levers in them or something that would explode. And those came out, but they were really fragile, so they kept breaking all the time. But they were kind of neat because grenades weren't really a thing. Like you didn't have like Enola Gaze or the any of the companies now that are making like tossable grenades that actually explode and shoot things. When we first started playing, 20 years ago, like you just didn't have accessibility to that kind of stuff. It wasn't made. So that's kind of pointers for somebody who actually wants to get into it, I guess. Um, as far as, let me think here, a field, yeah, that could literally be a whole nother hour or so we could talk about it. Fields are tricky. It used to be everybody was what they called South Carolina, California calls them renegade fields, where it's just a field where people go play. There's no waivers, there's no rules per se. It's all gentleman agreement, and off they go and play. And we did that for years and years before we actually started to organize bigger games. And then it was, we had to get event insurance for the games because the landowner was worried about getting sued. Which nowadays, of course, everybody's kind of sue happy, so that makes kind of a big deal. Um, but you pay for the event insurance and you pay all of your costs and whatnot. By the time you get done with it all, you might be able to make some money. But we didn't have a store on the field, which again, hindsight being 2020, we should have a store on the field. That would make more sense. Um, but generally speaking, like just fields are great, and we started playing in the woods. It was county land. It wasn't even like somebody's woods. It was actually like public land we usually played in. It was a pine forest they rebuilt. Some of my favorite games we had there. It was really a good time. But it was a much smaller crew. I mean, if your local airsoft group is like 30 or 50 strong, everybody knows everybody, and it's a completely different dynamic than going out to like a place where you get 100 and something people a weekend. Um, Ballahack puts on a hell of a good show, but it's not. You don't know everybody there, and it's a little different. Like I can remember, we had some airsoft games years and years ago where I could tell it was shooting at me by the sound of their gun. As weird as that sounds, like certain guns had certain speeds and certain guns had certain sounds when they shot. Like the old Tokyo Marui AUGs had a very distinctive sound, and I had two of the guys in the group had AUGs, so of course when they were shooting at you, you knew it was an AUG. One of the guys, Steve, had an M4. It had a very distinct. It was a 733 knockoff, so it had this very distinctive like quack 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 duck sound when it shot. So you'd always be able to do that. One of the guys had a FAMAS, and we set it up as a high-speed gear set. And the problem was sometimes it wouldn't. The motor was not great. We replaced it with a new one, but the original FAMAS had a 560 motor in them, not 1,000, and like it was definitely not a real good motor. and this thing would bind occasionally. Instead of making like airsoft noises, it would just go "wee." It was great, absolutely great. Hey, Matt's
Wow,
back.
we're at peak viewership as soon as I leave for a while, huh?
Yep. Well, nobody wants to see your ugly
Right,
face.
right. That's true.
They all want to stare into my
I just
long.
spent a lot of time deciding on the beer of the week here. One
Oh
of the
Jesus!
three refrigerator specials.
I'm sticking with my water. Thanks. Might be vodka.
Respect.
Might be diesel fuel. We only got one life. Let's get it over with. All right. So I wrapped up on stores and I was moving on to field and the joys of running fields and like comparing it to smaller, bigger fields.
Okay, yeah, that's a good
Kind of
segue.
talking about like when we started out, it was really a small group of people, and you could tell who was shooting at you by the sound of their gun. We were that small. And then progressing up to things like Balahack has like weekend games with like 200 people, like it's nuts. But it's really cool. Like I'm glad that they're able to pull that kind of stuff off and pull those numbers in because it shows that there's a lot of dedication to that field from a lot of people. And that's once you have a loyal fan base for your field, that's really kind of the whole thing. You want to try and keep them. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, the best way to lose them is to keep changing things around because people love that. That would be sarcasm. I don't know if that was caught in the back rows. A lot of people, when they go through, like, you get kind of used to a certain game style or a certain place that they like playing or a speed of how they play. Smaller fields are really bad at that. You get a lot of, if your field's like 4 acres or less, you find that a lot of times it's the same game, no matter what you call it. This is the new rule set. We've changed everything around. Cool. Same game. These are all
It's
the new.
amazing what kind of gameplay opens up when you have a total attendance of under 10 guys, but
Right.
assuming you're running a real operation, you got to have real ops. But
Yeah.
at our field in the waning years, was it waning years last summer? I think the most fun I had over there, since probably our first Halloween special coming up on 5 years ago, was a little one-off skirm. There were maybe 9 of us.
Yep. Yep.
Lord and Savior Jim, my buddy, who hadn't been out before. Three or four of our, the principal
Brandon?
rogues gallery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, like it's funny, like over the years of running and doing like a lot of airsoft stuff, like I've watched a lot of these guys grow up. So yeah, like I met Joe Setlock, who's one of our fans that's in the room there.
Tom
I
hasn't
met
grown up.
him. I don't even know. Got to be 12 years ago, maybe. Like he was just a kid, and now he's like an actual adult with like adult responsibilities and stuff. It's just weird. I got ordained to the Church of Life a number of years back so I could marry airsofters. It's a long story. It was very fueled by alcohol. I still blame Jimmy for that. But
That is pretty awesome.
yeah. So since then, I've done 14 weddings, and honestly, my track record is 1 in 13. So I'm doing pretty good so far. 13 couples stayed together, 1 didn't. So ironically enough, the first one. Maybe it had something to do with the fact I did it in the kilt the first time. Like I don't know, it was a weird thing, but the yeah. So get ordained for your piece. So this is how dedicated I was to my crew. I got ordained so I could marry them all. A bunch of the people I've actually went through and performed the weddings for. It's been really cool to see like a lot of these young kids who were like 15, 14 when I met them, and then I'm the guy performing their marriage, like at 30, and I'm like, this is just so fucking weird. Jimmy had once made the comment that something along the lines of stepfathers, aren't we all? And it was all the senior guys that were like my age or around my age were sitting around the fire drinking beer, and all the kids are doing stupid shit and shutting off fireworks and shit. And exactly, Caboose. So I mean, for us, it was just kind of like us just chilling out and enjoying ourselves the weekend, Saturday night, and the kids are running around, fucking huffing vapor shots at Everclear and launching fireworks at each other. And Jimmy is probably one of the coolest dudes, like that I know. Honestly, he was always very calm. He turns over and looks at us and goes, "Stepdads, one and all," or something to that effect. And I about pissed myself. I was laughing so hard. You had a lot of kids came out back then who didn't have male positive role models or whatever, and somehow we became the role models, and that's the most terrifying thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, I get the concept of having kids. I don't have any of my own that I know of. Um, but like you make a little army of yourselves, and then you become their leader, and that's kind of how airsoft worked for me.
Right.
And at some point in time, I became the leader, and I was like, "Oh Jesus, I have like 50 kids that literally will do anything. This is not. I should not have this power. This is not good." Other people got involved and went, "This power is awesome," and abused it. So there's that. It's kind of like the Catholic Church, I guess.
Well, this is no comment, but I was as someone whose last name ends in a vowel. Well, as he just
Right,
technically
right.
does, a real vowel, not Y.
No, no, I know, I
But
know.
it's meant to ask you, why don't had you ever thought about forming like a landscaping company with a few of these guys? Get some work done.
So yeah, so to this day, I have employees. I do remodeling for a living who are former airsofters. Literally every aspect of my life has had airsofters in it. My roommate, who's been my roommate for the better part of 20 years, who was an airsofter. Uh, Him and I have bought property together. Like, yeah. So yeah, I mean, honestly, like I've had a lot of really great people that came in and out of my life that, I'm very grateful for the chance to meet them and be part of their lives the period of time I was. I'm super grateful for all the friends that I still currently have that were, introduced to me via Airsoft or by Airsoft or through Airsoft or whatever. Um, and it's really kind of neat to see the progression. You know what I mean? Like, it's not so much like, and don't get me wrong, like, there's hundreds of fucking people that I met like at one or two games and I never saw again. And I've lost zero sleep over it because I don't care. And there's people who didn't agree with how I wanted to do things and didn't like me, and I don't care. Um, a lot of what was it? Their tears fuel my hate or my fuel my hate or something like that. I can't remember, there's a bumper sticker like that. But no, I don't have any ill will towards anybody at all anymore because honestly, like a lot of the stuff was just petty and stupid. But then again, some of the people that are no longer in my life, I'm totally okay with them never being in my life because they were not aligned, interested in my interests.
Right.
Shall we say? They were looking out for themselves, or they were looking out for whatever they were doing, or who they thought they were at the time. Like it was a little weird. We had a couple guys in the group that were definitely like mini cult leaders who started their own little band of people and then ran around with their guys, and it was pretty cool. Like honestly, like seeing how the teams formed and broke up and reformed was pretty neat. But I think the natural progression, is you start with a really good, tight group of people that you like on your field, and then you kind of work from there. I know there's a local group here that's working pretty hard to try and promote their field. I think they're doing okay. I don't know if I'll go back out and play anytime soon. I think that I'm going to stick to national level stuff at this point in time. My body won't take a lot of the abuse anymore. I'm way too old and way too fucking fat. Yeah, I mean, I'm down a bunch. I'm down a bunch, honestly,
Oh
from
hell yeah, dude.
last month. But I'm still a heavy set dude, and my knees are fucked up, my back's fucked up, and I'm old. So I don't mind being like, hey, sorry, I'm old.
No more Naruto running across 22-acre of woods. Yeah.
I've been saying for years that running equivalent's cheating. Like honestly, like nobody should be running. If you're running, you're definitely cheating. Like it just, I
Well, it
mean,
means you don't have 3 chest rigs on, loaded to the gills.
rabbit armor. Yeah, if I'm running, you can't kill me. That's rabbit armor theory. Not that I've ever seen that live in front of me and then yelled at people for it ever in my life.
Right.
You do realize you're getting hit, right? No. Okay, stop running for a second. Why do they keep shooting at me? Because you're not calling your hits. Didn't hit me. There's literally BBs all around you.
Lodged in your BDUs.
Yeah, yeah. Let me pull that out of your face.
Those are from last up.
Yeah, they've been in there for a while. I wanted to leave them for marination purposes. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. But that said, I think that, people who want to get involved in either opening a store or field should, but do it for the right reasons.
Right.
And if you're going to do it, don't half-ass it. Like that's the other thing. I've done a couple of fields that literally shoestring budgets, and those don't go well. You really want to be
Right. Yeah, you need something for a base
put
capital.
buildings up, make something interesting, something different, something nobody's seen before. All of that helps. All of that. and it's just a matter of you obligating yourself and saying, "I'm going to do this the right way," and then set it up and run it. If
Right.
people offer to help you with no strings attached, take the help. As one of my staff guys, Matt, like every time you came out and you help us out, dude, it was a day I didn't have to stress.
Oh yeah, it
And
was fun.
and honestly, it's a great time for a short period of time, but eventually you do get
And
kind of burned out.
fun.
And like Evan's background is amazing for all of the ops that he set up for us, because he did a lot of the background for us.
Got a bunch of us. Got a paperwork over all the old paperwork over there.
Yep. And then on top of that, then he used to run the games, and he would run both as the guy who's running the game and also like an embedded person. So he was somebody you had to deal with as an NPC, as well as being the guy who's running the like.
It was a
So
lot.
many
Yeah.
levels of awesome, and he got burned out, I'm sure. But he was literally like he's my hero. I love him to death. The Hive Mind's another one. I can never say enough good things about Hive Mind, regardless of his horrific online persona. He's the equivalent of a bull elephant in a china shop. Like there's no subtlety to the man at all, which is one of the reasons why I love him so much. And there you go. Yeah, Joe is 16 when he
Joe,
died.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus, man. And how old are you now, Joe? I won't tell anybody. It'll just be on the 4 people that actually watch this shit show.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hive Mind came up with some of the most amazing game dynamics I've ever seen in any game, and it's funny to me, like some of the game dynamics that he came up with, literally are showing up in games that I see now at places like Balahack, Lion Claws, a lot of the different ideas that we had for like how combat should be, where we would have a team that literally was not supposed to shoot at all for the weekend. Their job was to come in with cameras and take pictures of shit and stay out of firefights. Like that is some intense like hide and seek shit.
Oh,
And
yes.
we were doing that in like 2006. So now they've just opened up. I was reading one of the Milsim West or something, or maybe it was Milsim West. I can't remember. ASM. I can't remember. One of them was talking about having like a recon element that would just go run around and take pictures of shit. And I'm like, we did that fucking like 12 years, 15 years ago. Catch up, fuckers. But no, I mean honestly, like it's just cool to see like some of the stuff like that people are getting into now is the stuff that we were doing literally 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, green versus tan is getting old. It's fun for open skirm Saturday at your local field.
I want espionage. And I
People
want
driving 5 states to do
open-
it need their head examined. I don't care what the fuck
Yeah,
anyone says. Where are my slippers? Anyway.
I think at this point in time, for most of the bigger games, like for like Milsim games, I'm more about the location. Um, the Muscatatuck Center in Illinois, I think it was one of the coolest places I'd ever played at, and they had like a shanty town, and they had like tanks, and they had a collapsed like all this craziness and big buildings,
Oh shit.
buildings. Oh yeah, and it was literally the rolling battles that went through there were just they're great, And they, of course, they had big chunks of wood, and then they had like like looked like a dump, like piles of shit and debris everywhere, and you fought through that. And then they had like an old school bus that was on the side of the road, kind of almost on its side, and the people were fighting in and out of that. I'm like, this is cool. They had a 6-story sniper tower set up in like the middle of the place. And one of the former Airsoft guys, I won't mention any direct names, but he's from Penyan, made one of his first 500-foot shots or 400-something foot shots from that tower and tagged a dude. And I was like, oh, okay. I'll never be as cool as that guy. But yeah, that was mightily impressive. But yeah, Muscatatuck was a really cool place. We did a Ren Fair with Lion Claws in Virginia. And when I say Ren Fair, like the place had been abandoned for years, but there was still a pirate ship there that you could actually go on. And then there was like these towers and these buildings, and like it was really cute. The game itself, I mean, I don't really remember the game, to be honest. I was staffing, but I also got heat stroke there. Not a good weekend. But that said, the place was so cool. And being able to go in there and check it out. We did the Lace Factory in Scranton a couple times. Also Lion Claws. That was a lot of fun. We did a textile mill up in Maine years and years ago. I don't even remember who ran that. Maybe it was Masato. I don't remember. I don't want to forget anybody, but I don't remember, to be honest. We did Pine Plains games. We did, I think, yeah, John had 2 games. John Liu had a couple games up at Fort Drum at the Mount facility there. That was kind of cool. But it's the location. Like, I can play in a field with a bunch of shitty bunkers anywhere in the world. Like, literally, those fields are a dime a dozen. I want to see, like, industrial complex. Like, they were doing the games down south. I can't remember what the complex was. It was some sort of food manufacturing outfit with these big conveyor belts and shit. And I'm like, that's cool.
Jesus.
They do a private team challenge thing out in the Mojave Desert where they have a bunch of old planes. And you sign up with your 6-man team, and then you get to storm the planes and shoot the terrorists and rescue the hostages.
Oh, yeah. You've told me about
it. Yeah, I'm like, that's pretty cool, man. Like, I like that. Something different, something that's going to spark an interest. It's not just force on force. My flag's up, no, my flag's up, no, my flag's up. Like, that doesn't seem. I've done that so many times. It's just overplayed in my book. So now it's like I want to have something that's going to be a little bit more of a capture my attention and make me go along in a storyline. Like, I want to have an adventure with you. And that sounds really weird. It's actually what I said to the first officer who arrested me. I told him flat out I wanted to go on an adventure.
I was going to say, it doesn't sound weird if you're driving 8 states. And, I can't be bothered to, drive.
No.
It was
going 40 over
the speed
limit. Now, my issue was more like a 40 over the speed limit issue. Let's go on an adventure together. So, yeah, I mean, like, last few years that I was doing staff work with national level events, my buddy Spencer, my wife, at the time still my girlfriend, I don't think we were engaged at the time even, we're traveling around and staffing for a lot of big name productions, helping out with chronographing and making sure people follow the rules and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And we had an absolute blast. We planned weeks for these, like, the games for the weekend. Okay, we'll leave on Wednesday and we'll drive to Kentucky, and I want to stop off here. Let's go to Memphis while we're down there. And on the way back, we'll stop in Nashville, only because of Nashville chicken. Yeah, let me tell you, like, it's worth the drive. I don't care what anybody says. Nashville chicken, the hot chicken, is amazing. We stopped in Memphis. We did a lot of sightseeing, and we would try and find, like, the best place to eat when we were in town. So before I left, I'm online checking out, we're going to this, podunk nowhere place that, like, it's in the middle of nowhere because that's where this location is. And, look, I found this 5-star Michelin restaurant that's literally 3 hours away. So if we drive down a day early, we can go to this restaurant, have dinner, go get the hotel, and then be fresh and ready to go when the game starts. So we became like rolling foodies. Like, it was bad. And
that sounds awesome.
It is a good time. I saw one of the coolest Elvis impersonators I've ever seen in my life in Memphis. We were down there, down to Fort Hood in Texas. And we stopped off in Memphis tonight. I wanted to go to the Blue Street Cafe because it's well known for its barbecue. And we went. We had, oh God, we ate so much soul food. It was ridiculous. Collard greens and hush puppies and all the whole 9 yards. It was bad. Usually on these trips, I would literally end up like putting on excess weight because I'm fat and I like food. And places like Memphis make food. I'm not saying that Buffalo doesn't, or anywhere else, or wherever the hell you're from. Every place,
different experience,
yeah. But it's just like, oh my God, I can't get this at home. This is amazing.
Right.
So we went to Memphis, and then after we got done eating, we went over to one of the local bars that was down the street on Beale Street, and they had an Elvis impersonator. I'm like, okay, cool. I've never seen an Elvis impersonator. I really want to know what that show is like. So I think we paid like the $3 or $4 cover charge, or whatever the hell it was, and had paid our $10 beers. And so we're sitting down, and the guy came out, and he did 3 Elvis songs, and he's like, you guys are kind of, we got to change the mood up. You guys like Metallica? And so all of us kind of were like, yeah. So then he did Elvis covering Metallica as an Elvis impersonator. And I'm not going to lie, that shit was amazing. So my wife had a couple of like little clips of it doing like Enter Sandman as Elvis.
Oh my God. This sounds like it rocked.
Yeah, well, and the band was doing Metallica, and he was just singing, the part as Elvis. And
Right.
I'm like, my brain couldn't comprehend it for a bit. I was like, what am I watching here? Like, and then, once it dawned on me that this dude was actually going to go into a full set of Metallica. He did like 8 songs in a row, all
Jesus
Metallica as
Christ.
Elvis, flawless. I mean, didn't miss a beat, didn't miss anything. Sounded like Elvis with a growly voice doing, Metallica. And I was like, oh my god, this is too much. And then he was like, how about Jamaican? He swapped to Bob Marley. So he did 3 or 4 Marley songs sung as Elvis, as an Elvis impersonator. And I'm like, I gotta go. Like, I'm sober enough. I need to leave now because I can drive a car. Otherwise, I'm gonna stay here and listen to this clown fucking sing for the rest of my life. And so we got out of there pretty quick. But we spent a good couple hours in there with him, and the guy was phenomenal, like absolutely phenomenal. But and that's just like wherever we went for a trip for any of this, was well, where can we stop to eat? What's that town known for? You know, what can you find in Richmond, Virginia? Like, I've never been there before. I can tell you, I may not be there. Yeah, Joe's 30. So I've known Joe Sutcliffe for 14 years. Jesus, Joe. Oh, fuck, I feel old as hell. But like, what's in Richmond? So I can tell you, when we were there, we found the most amazing Mediterranean place. The guy was from Greece, and he was, he was a younger man, probably, I'm going to say late 30s, early 40s.
Oh, shit.
And so I had heat stroke when we were down there. Actually, all 3 of us, my wife, me, and my other buddy that went down with us, all 3 of us got heat stroke by 5 o'clock. And we were drinking water all day and never really thought about it, but the humidity was so fucking high, just dead. So they gave us a bunch of water. We all puked. Once we were able to hold the water down, I'm like, I'm gonna drive this back. And one of my buddies, in the airsoft thing, was like, well, we can have one of the guys follow you if you want. I'm like, no, I think I'm like, all right. And he's like, you should probably go and eat. Like, go find some place to grab some food. And I'm like, okay, fine. So I literally drove down the road. I saw this Mediterranean side. I pulled in, walked in, and it was like a bodega. Like, the dude had shelves full of groceries and shit, and had 2 tables. And I'm like, so how do you get fed here? And he's like, sit at the table, I'll come over. I said, okay. So I'll sit down. And he comes over and sits with us. Just sits right down. He says, so you guys ever have, Mediterranean style food? And I said, well, I've had a lot of Greek food in the years. I said, I'm very familiar with Greek food. And he says, oh, okay, well, what kind of Greek food do you know? And I said, well, I worked as a short order cook for about 2 years at a Greek restaurant. And I can make souvlaki, and I can do, lamb, and I can do gyro, and I can do, like, I'm familiar with how it's made. And he's like, oh, okay. And I said, I know how to make spanakopita. I said, with spinach and the feta and the phyllo dough. I said, you can cook it up and make a sheet of that. I know how to do, what is the other one? Whatever. So I know how to do some Greek food, and I'm not good anymore because I'm way out of practice, but I used to be really good at cooking. So I said, that's what I'm used to. I would love to try what you got. And he says, okay, well, I'll get you a gyro, and I'll make up some chicken and a little salad. And I said, okay, that sounds great. I says, like, literally, we haven't eaten at all today. We've been up. It's like 5, 6 o'clock at night. We just got, like, diagnosed as being dehydrated. And he's like, oh, not a problem. I'm going to grab you some olives. So he runs over and he grabs this assortment of, like, the big black Clamato olives and all these little green olives and a little bit of feta on top and a little bit of oil. And it was like, I could still taste it. And like, even now, like, the first time I had the first olive, and I was like, oh my God, the salt is exactly what my body wanted.
Right.
And I was like, oh God, So my wife and my buddy are both doing the same thing. So he kind of came around, and he brought us drinks, but he made, like, fresh drinks. And he brought over some Malta stuff that he had. And I was like, I didn't know you guys drank the Malta stuff. And he's like, only certain flavors. Because it's more of a Spanish drink. And so, I mean, it was a really, really fun time. And the guy was on point. Like, his food was fantastic.
That's cool.
If you ever end up in Richmond, on Kings Highway, there was a great Mediterranean place that was there once. I have no idea if it's still there. But my God, that was, well worth the trip. And then the downside of going to Richmond is you go right through DC, and DC is literally, like, the worst place on the planet next to Dallas. Dallas, to me, is the worst place in the world. I don't ever want to go back to Dallas, ever. For any reason. I don't care if somebody dies. I don't care if I die and that's where they're going to take me. Don't take me to Dallas. I hate Dallas. Anyway. So that gives us, a little bit of stuff to play around with. Obviously, we've got a live show, so this is fine. but I have to wrap up because it's now 8:39.
Yeah, is it about that time? Okay, I was wondering
And
if
if
you
I
could
don't,
give us a.
I could keep going all night. That's the
I was
problem.
just give us a little sneak peek of a few more Mike stories because I got that message you sent in our admin chat. Um,
Okay, so we'll
but-
start. We'll go over it really quick, and I'll tell you
right,
two
right.
of them.
So,
You
oh,
choose which one
yeah,
you want to hear.
I
You
choose
choose
which
which.
two. Yeah,
Yeah.
outstanding. Let's start from the top. What's the AK Springers story? This sounds like it has potential.
Okay, so when we were still very young in our formation locally here, we had this brilliant idea. One of the guys he had a store in like a dirt mall. I don't know what you call them, flea market. So he had a little store in there, and we were trying to help him out. And he was a really good dude. His name was Jay, and mixed feelings on Jay. Some people didn't like him because there was some issues. He couldn't quite get the product in quick enough for the people that paid him already. Like there was possibly some shadiness going there towards the end, but at this point in time, we all still liked him. And he was buying every single airsoft variation he could find on whatever weird ass websites he was ordering shit from. And he would get like these god awful, like half size replica 45s that like your pinky wouldn't even fit into the goddamn trigger. He got a bunch of these little AEGs, but they were like what do they call those things? A little tiny, like scaled down
L-pegs.
version.
Oh,
Like the little tiny ones, and they held like 30 rounds, but they were full auto. And I'm like, this is the dumbest shit ever. So, but he always threw something in towards our raffle when we had our big games. He'd come down, we'd have a good time. He'd bring all the BBs and shit. We'd buy it off him. And he always gave us like, a handful of stupid shit to throw away. Well, he got this crate of AKs in, and they were supposed to be these. Well, the magazines came out. They had a folding bayonet, and they were supposed to be these high-powered bolt action AK. So
okay.
where the charging handle was, there was a plastic bolt that stuck out, probably a good 4 inches. Oh, these guns were also 2/3 size. So instead of being like, a regular size AK, they were like this. But the bayonet came out and made them full size. So the bayonet stuck out the end, and it was a hard plastic bayonet. Like, you could
hell
actually hurt
yes.
somebody with this. So he got these stupid AKs and brought them down and gave me a box of them for raffle. And like I literally had no concept of what to do with these. And I'm like, okay, fine. So I hand them out. Like whatever. There was like 5 in a box or 4 in a box or whatever. So part of the raffle, everybody, the 4 top winners got an AK. Then they open them. So most of the airsoft stuff back then was spring L-pegs and a handful of decent Marui guns.
Okay.
I don't think Classic Army was even making guns back then. I think it was like the year before Classic Army came up with its first guns.
Oh, wow. All right.
Dating myself. And so like you had like I think Under the Gun came out maybe that year or the year after. I don't even remember what the timeline was, to be honest with you. So these things shot like 500 FPS with 2s out of the box. Everything else shot like 300 FPS. So these clowns pulled them out of the guns, load them up with .2s, and then proceed to start shooting each other at close range with them, thinking they're not going to be that powerful. I mean, they're hinky. They're cheap plastic, and they're not. They don't look like they can do shit, except for crank a BB right through your skin at 500 FPS. Which is immediately what happened afterwards. So all of these guns ended up being like ultra high powered snipers that people were like, how do I mount a scope to this? And I'm like, it's a fucking piece of shit Springer. What do you mean? How can you put a... Yeah, that led to a whole arms race for a while. It was very disturbing. But that said, that's kind of how it works when you get like mystery guns from China, I guess. 500 FPS spring AKs that outshoots everything on the field. Oh, and completely inaccurate. Like, no hop up. And the barrel was probably 7 or 8 millimeter. Because you could literally just drop BBs down the barrel, no problem at all. So what they were doing to cut down the FPS is they'd take a handful of BBs and chuck them down the barrel, rack this thing, and then launch like 9 BBs at you at once, like a shotgun.
I do that with my 14-year-old M4 Springer for the Halloween specials. I use it as a fucking grape shot.
Hey, it worked. I'm just saying. But yeah, it was pretty funny. So we ended up with those. I mean, they didn't last very long, thank God. I think that most of them died before the next game, but it was pretty cool that he showed up with these ridiculously, dangerously terrifying AKs.
All
Oh,
right.
Jesus Christ.
Awesome. All right.
All right,
My other
what
one
else?
has to be the airsoft javelin was another one in your message. Little
Okay.
wrap for the night.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about Jay tonight, apparently. So he had the store, right? And they had these M16s that he saw online that had a bayonet. And he's like, man, I really want these things. And I'm like, they look like they're made like $6 in plastic, dude. Like, totally not worth your time. Nope, I'm going to order a box. And they came like, I want to say 144 to a box. Like, it was something ridiculous. And I'm like, you're never going to sell all those fucking shitty spring M4s. No. They're going to be great. They're going to be full size. They're going to have the detach. It's supposed to have a detachable bayonet. And they were like, I can't remember. I think they were spring. You had to pull a cocky handle back and shoot them, whatever. And they shot just fine. Admirably shot probably 210 FPS. At the time, not horrible. Nowadays, yeah. Like, unless you've actually gotten into a total game with like 20 dudes with just springers, these memory strikes of mine may not hit any kind of mark on you. So in any case, he gets these stupid things in, brings them over. He's so excited. He's got this big, huge warehouse box that showed up. It's 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot cube, filled with the shittiest M4s you've ever seen in your life, with fixed bayonets, not detachable, and they're just totally rigid. Like, they're hard plastic rigid. They're not even like no creaking to them, because they were literally 2 pieces of plastic slapped together. That's what they were, with whatever guts they had to put in there. So you shot them about 4 times, and then the whole lower, where the magazine and trigger assembly are, usually cracked out.
Hell yes.
So what you were left with was a full-size stock for an M16, the upper part of the M16 body, the entire M16 front, and this wonky-ass fucking bayonet. You see where this is going, right? So we're having a combat fight, and I don't remember who picked it up first, but somebody grabbed one of these fucking things and hurled it through the air at somebody else. And it landed point first in the dirt and stuck there, which then led to everybody throwing these at each other. It was like watching a game of jarts with cocaine. Like, all of a sudden there was one, then there was like 50 in the air, and we're like, holy shit, like someone's gonna die. So all the adults are running around screaming at all these wonderful children to stop lobbing sharpened plastic spears at each other, because, Lord of the Flies was not a book, and there was not a lesson to be learned from Lord of the Flies, apparently, and the adults are morons. So we had this Airsoft Javelin Club. We kind of started as a joke. We were down at Big Nick's land and down in where the hell was his property? Franklinville. And we set up a line with spray paint that you could run up to, and you'd hurl these bad boys in the air to see how much distance you could get. And it was entertaining for like a couple hours. Like, the kids thought it was the coolest thing we've ever done. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm just glad I got them to stop throwing them at each other. Because, like, honestly, all I could picture is some kid, mouth open, oh my God, that javelin's coming right for it, thud in his eye. And then, like, mom's going to be mad at me. I mean, rightfully so, but I didn't want to deal with that. Yeah. Sorry about, like, impaling your child on this giant plastic bayonet. So, my suggestion, again, this goes back to your store, guys. Make sure you know what the hell you're ordering. Because, honestly, dude, like, sometimes it looks really good on paper, and it shows up in your store, and you're like, oh, this is a piece of turd. Fantastic. So, 144 spring AK or M4s, not so much. 500 FPS AK springers, not so much. It just it's a crapshoot. I suppose it's kind of true with anything you mail order from someplace else, without knowing what you get. It's like a mail order bride, but with a badger, or Tasmanian devil, or something equally as unpleasant, and that's what you
get. And no
get.
review average.
Yeah, and the bride doesn't show up. It's just a box of the Tasmanian devil. Oh, it's drunk and been feeding on nothing but 8-balls the entire trip. Good luck. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of how that whole thing works. Like honestly, is like we went through a lot of growing pains coming through what we did, and we had. I mean, I think that overall, looking back and seeing guys that I've known for 14 years who still talk to me and still laugh at my horrible humor, tells me that it's not all bad, but you have to learn and work through it, and you have to kind of keep at it. Like, when you lose that passion, it's really hard to stay doing it. But anywho, so
That said, if you're you could pick out as you said. That said, you could pick a worse hobby to attempt to, when you make a hobby a job, you no longer have a hobby, right, Mike? And you could pick a worse hobby to try and make into, the next big internet show.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, depending on what you want to get into.
That's the sacrifice you have to make here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sacrificing a whole hour and 20 minutes of my life right now. And I mean, I know it's going to pay me back in dividends later on, but for right now, boy, the struggle's real, man. The struggle's real.
It's a capital investment, Mike.
That's right. Long term. I'm playing the long
There's nothing tangible. There won't be for a long time. But
Squabby showed up.
Hey, Squab's here.
Oh my God, we have 3 viewers? That's terrifying.
It's still showing 1 on my end, so I know this thing's bullshit.
Oh.
And it's said 1 for a while, so if Squab just showed up, I know there's at least 2 of them.
Might have left. It was 10, 15 minutes ago.
Right, no, yeah, it dropped from 3 to 1.
Oh, okay. That's weird.
But it's been at 1 for a while, so if Squab just popped in, I digress. I thought there was something, but it definitely wasn't something that would have kept you here. So, yeah, I think we'll call it there. No one else seems to be materializing, and that's fine. So, yeah, everybody, until then, be sure to throw out your universal holsters, and we will see you in hell, if not next time. Peace, guys.